creating a cyborg girl in Photoshop Part 1. So this is a series of tutorials I'm going to create here, basically demonstrating my process of creating these cyborg illustrations, which I have three here, and two females and a male figure. Each one is very intensely painted, has lots of base textures to work off of, but if I zoom in here you can see lots of little detail for all the robotic parts and basically all the rendering itself. So we have some background photo image that I might use perhaps like some construction site, and so there's some base layers to work off of, but the whole process is basically a lot of painting. In the future we'll get into how to render out these different parts, how to work with lighting and effects. Like in this one you got all this lighting effects and clouds and so forth. I'll show you how, for example, to create this archangel wings, the lighting effects in there. We won't specifically be doing this particular cyborg, but just to show you, a different one. We have some transparency with these sort of shields going across the legs here, and then the male figure here has sort of camouflage for one leg and more of a cyborg leg on the other side. Has very sort of organic cyborgs. That's sort of the way I work. In this series I can imagine myself maybe creating a book. So we'll see here, and in this detail here you can see lots of really cool rendering. Some of it you might think is just a texture overlay, but a lot of it's actually painted. Now here's a sketch for the new one I had, which is a cyborg girl, and the idea here was that she was this huntress of some sort. She had like some sort of futuristic bow and arrow, and her friendly cat pet. And I drew some buildings in the background, sort of sci-fi buildings, to kind of sketch out this idea. But I realized early on that the proportions and so forth are a little bit younger than what I would probably like, than I imagined this child being. This is probably a child of maybe, 4 to 6 years old, and I can imagine her being maybe closer to the teens, so 10 to 12. So I have some other references here that I'm going to share with you. This is Keisha Hughes from Whale Rider, a great film, one of my favorites. And just a couple poses here, and I want to use more of her proportions overall. So as a base, just as a structure, I'm not going to directly reference the photo in terms of actual rendering or anything like that, but to give you an idea, just sketching out proportions. So we're going to bring in one of these photos into Photoshop and use that. So we're going to get started here, and I'm just going to right click on this image and open up Photoshop, and open with, and choose Photoshop CS6. It's the version I have. I know they have the current version is the cloud, so I have the version right before that. There's the cloud version that has tons of updates. So the first thing I'm going to do is check the dimensions here, and I realize that the image size is a little bit smaller than what I want. I basically want 13 by 19 by 300 with vertical composition, so 13 for the width and then 19 for the height, 300 for resolution, RGB color of course, and basically give it a title of Cyborg Girl. So I'm just going to type that in here real quick, and then click OK. This is now I can there's lots of different ways you can bring the images. I'm just going to drag up to the tab with the mouse, holding mouse down, and then release, and you have it open up on its own layer. And then I'm going to open up one of those photos just by going File, Open, and find that reference photo that I was going to choose. I think this one here, which is pretty much her whole figure, Keisha Castle Hughes, except for her foot's kind of hidden by the motor there. And I'm going to size it up by hitting Control T. Now I don't recommend this if you're going to use the actual photo, because that causes artifacts. Basically Photoshop has to fill in those bits of data, those little pixels. But in terms of just using a reference, it's not a bad idea to just upscale. It's no big deal. I'm not going to use the actual photo in the scene here. I'm not even going to use the actual pose. So once I have it sized I like, just hit enter, and basically I'm just going to drop the opacity a little bit of the layer and turn off the layer underneath. Add a new layer right above it, going down and click on the new layer tab, and just use my brush. B is the hotkey for brush, and if I right click you'll see I have all these different kinds of brushes set up here, and I'm just going to use a standard chalk brush, and it has pin pressure sensitivity, and it goes from thick to thin. So I'm working on a Cintiq display, so basically the harder press on the display, the darker the line, the heavier line. So you can see your shape dynamics and transfer are both checked to get that effect. So basically I'm just going to sketch out again like the head and the body and the arms, and very loosely just gestures, just kind of blocking out the overall shapes, because what I'm looking for is the general proportions of the figure, and I'm moving even the arm out a little bit even though it's hidden behind the legs, just to bring it out further, and then just kind of imagining approximately where the foot would be, because you can't really see the foot in this picture. And then once I have this figure sort of sketched out, basically I'm going to turn off the photo reference and just work from the sketch. So there you go. And basically at this point all I'm going to do is measure, in proportion you measure the head and compare it to the body. So from the shoulders to the hip area it's about 2 heads down. And you measure up to leg, it's maybe like a head and a half, and then from the knee to the foot it's another head and a half or so. The arms about 2.5 heads. So just kind of getting those general proportions. So now that we have our proportions set up, we have the right sort of figure that we want. We can look back at the sketch and realize, okay, we're going to take this much further and we're going to modify it quite a bit, and then in the future tutorials we'll see how that whole process lays out. But this is working out okay overall. We sort of have our references and our sketch, so we'll see you soon in Photoshop CS6, and we'll continue in part 2 of the Cyborg tutorials.